Hello, welcome back to the channel. I've taken a break for a while. Once again, the Inner Mind Communication channel is about more than just communicating within your mind, but it centers on that. So, whenever you're thinking, uh, that's in your mind first. And when you're dreaming, that's in your mind. And the practices, which I've come to call the inner artist mindfulness practice, is all about. It's all about developing empathy and awareness. Okay? And it's about actually being in touch with your feelings. When your feelings, I'm talking about the inner child and your inner infant. Well, how does this apply in different areas? Well, empathy is a big factor in a healthy democracy. And going out to vote, people don't want me to say this, they don't want to hear this. But if you go out and you vote selfishly, just for you, it's not enough to support democracy. You've got to consider other people. You got to care and love other people. Not just you, not just your family, not just people in your religion or in your uh, socio-economic group, but everybody. Hmm? And the mystics in all of the religions will tell you that you need empathy. There are different kinds of empathy. That empathy gets enhanced as we grow and mature. That empathy can get an assist from objectivity, which I call the inner counselor, and the storyteller, which is your inner artist, um, and well, the inner artist is actually the creator of all you imagine. So it has lots of faces, and one is combining objectivity and empathy, and that's your inner counselor. And and the other is a storyteller, because that's when you're outside of the drama of your life, looking onto it. You're in a kind of timeless realm, and you are in a creative mode. It's creative empathy. You're, you're caring about another person or yourself, and you're using creative empathy. You're using different kinds of perspectives, like the counselor, and like the storyteller, which is a face of the. You're a face of the inner artist. The inner artist is the Paramatma in Vaishnava uh, Hinduism, if you want to, Dharma Shastra. Um, the Watcher, it's also been called, and it's essentially the creator of all you imagine, and up above the drama in your life, which is what's the face of that is, your more direct connection to your feelings, which is your inner child and your inner infant. The infant is just your inner child without language before you had language. It's still there. The child in there is still there. And is this practical? Okay, before I go to the next step. Yes. I have, from my own experience, I have this aches and pains in my old age and so on, but also a kind of itch that uncomfortable skin allergies, and they plague me, But it's pushed by feelings from the time I was a child. Okay, and I gave a sermon once that broke out in hives. That nervousness, which was a big part of my inner child, I can calm that down by putting on a face of, by being creative, being the inner artist, putting on one of the faces, and the face I choose is the inner counselor. It cares, but uses empathy, objective empathy, and speaking from that perspective, my inner mind communication to my child is, as I'm having trouble sleeping because of the uncomfortable allergies, I say in order to lower the impact of these allergies and let me sleep, I talk to my inner child or inner kid, and I just say, hey, little guy, you're okay now. Everything's all right. Right away, I relax, and the allergy isn't so intense, and I can go to sleep. Okay, there's so many different ways in which this stuff can be used, and it's all part of the mystic path, getting to know your inner artist and using the inner artist for your inner reflections. And I mentioned the storyteller face and the counselor face. There's also the caregiver face, which uses compassionate empathy. That's your inner artist putting on the face of the person who has compassion for you. And that compassion, that's the main focus. All of these roles that you play are going to have all of these things, but there's a focus, a main focus. Okay, so if the main focus is compassion, what that is providing a sense of safety, so that you can feel and express what happened to you. And a light version of that would be like little Susie skins her knee, and she just gets up and she's playing, she's skipping rope and whatever, and then she sees Mama. Mama is that compassion, that permission, and safety to feel. So she goes to her mom and she says, "Oh, my knee," and she's feeling that damage, she's safe to feel it. And by the way, when you feel, endorphins are released. endorphins are healing. They're part of the healing process. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Along with many other things, but it is a factor. And so then mother, the mother's permission to feel. And then Mama just does some magic things. She becomes the inner counselor, perhaps, to little Susie and says, you know what, though? Your other knee was skinned just like this, and it's all better now. You think that might be the case here? That your knee's going to be all better soon? And probably little Susie's relaxing a bit about things. And then she takes on the storyteller that changes the picture of things, and that's her inner artist becoming the storyteller, or which is also the story changer, reteller. And so she says, let's go get some ice cream. Distraction, yes. A different story, a different perspective, yes. And so little Susie's now really, really, really happy. So, and now you're looking at, what is he going to talk about this guy? This is a Senate hearing about the Department of Government Efficiency. I'm sorry. Government efficiency. Yeah. How does inner mind communication relate to politics? Well, it relates in the sense of the absolute necessity for these phases of empathy and the inner artist. And if you don't have that, if you don't have these forms of empathy, government doesn't work very well. And you don't have a democracy. Forget democracy. You think the billionaires really care about you? Power corrupts. Makes you sick. It takes you into another place where if you're not careful, where you really don't have that much empathy anymore for people outside of your own circle. And that's a typical thing. That's why power corrupts. And doesn't have to, but it's a tendency. And absolute power corrupts absolutely. You picture a black hole. Gravity's great, but you don't want to be sucked into a black hole. That's the end of you. So, this kind of perspective and practice is very useful in understanding government. And the government, in the big picture, is the face I call the counselor face. It's more about caring about people, in a way that, even a democracy it is, it's about caring about people in an objective way. How can we best make sure that everyone is cared for? That should be, the objective thing, the laws and, things that protect people's rights and things like that. And that's the main focus. Of course, the media has a more creative focus, and it's showing you all of the different stories and perspectives and views. It's very creative, and it cares. Well, it should. It depends on how healthy the society is, right? And then you've got church, what we call church in the United States anyway, is nonprofit organizations that are about really and objectively are about having a sense of family. It's compassion. It's more about compassion. That's their job. And those extended family organizations, which are about compassion, well, that can come in a variety of flavors and ways. It's this religion or that, or the lack of it. And for some people, it's the local bar. They don't abuse it. So it's his extended family perspective. And these voices in a democracy, they need to have the sense, even though they're all interrelated, and there's the business of church, and there's the media concerns of the government, and all of these things are there in each organization. But it's the main focus that we're looking at here that determines the role. The same in yourself. So, what would be an objective approach to caring, to empathy in government? It should be that everybody has a chance to succeed, that things are fair. There's no real free trade unless there's fair trade. And there are a lot of ways in which some people, because they're greedy, they don't want the game to bless everyone. Mostly me. And this is the attitude that you can get if you get too much money. And this is the attitude some people have with no money. But, yeah. But the greedy are not just the rich. But it can be a tendency there to just amass more and more power, more and more money. And Jesus says money, the love of it, is the root of all evil. Well, what is evil? Let's go to that. Let's go to that for a minute. I'm going to get to this over here. What is evil? Well, evil comes from damaged faith and love. If you don't get your needs met, then you have this kind of desperate helplessness, which produces tremendous anxiety. And this anxiety is a threat to your body and your mind. So the brain jumps in and changes that need which wasn't met, which damaged your faith and love, the ability to give and receive needs efficiently and do well. It gets in the way of that. And so the brain, in order to lower the temperature, the anxiety, jumps in and gives you something symbolic that's similar to what you really needed, some sense of safety, some sense of the need being filled. And this pursuit of this and this love for the merely symbolic, which Jesus talks against when he says, consider the lilies of the field. They're not, going crazy. They don't toil. They don't get exhausted. But look at them. They get what they need, and they're beautiful. So it's this symbolic. He's talking against this symbolic acting out, really, where people are going after things like money as if it's, as a replacement, a replacement for something that they didn't get as they were growing up and so on. So when you don't get those needs met, then you're looking for symbols of them, and that keeps your anxiety down, which is a good thing when you're actually helpless to feel and process. It's a bad thing as you continue in that pressured state, because the impact of this is very strong. If you adverse childhood experiences is another word for what I'm talking about, and they have finally connected this to future disease, because that force is still there. And when you don't have a real connection to your needs and your feelings, then it affects your immune system. Your immune system doesn't know good from bad. It thinks the good thing is the symbolic thing. And the symbolic thing is not good. It is the root of evil. Back to evil. Because it's insatiable. The need for power, the need for money can be just from all of this damaged faith and love around needs that were never met. So feeling those things and addressing those things is essential to working against evil, working against symbolic need, or what I call hope dope. People are on hope dope, big time. And that's the worship or the love of money and power. And so billionaires, and power corrupts. It easily corrupts, and it corrupts in proportion to how damaged the person might be. Jesus talked about this again, where he sat down with people that were outcasts from the society, and who came, why are you sitting with these people? This is the healthy don't need a physician. It's the sick. Duh. So, yeah. So, how do you avoid evil? You practice these things in your mind. So, and you practice these things in your communications in daily life and in every sphere of that life. And part of that sphere is, and a very important one, is politics. You have to be involved in politics. For instance, if you think that the two, let's just say there are two candidates, um, one is, then they're both in your mind evil. Okay, one is worse than the other, and those are your only choices. And you don't vote. Well, guess what the effect of not voting is in that situation? You're giving help to the greater of evil. Think about it. When you don't vote, you still voted. You, by helping, you would have voted for the lesser. But because you didn't, you helped the greater. So don't give me this thing about I don't vote because it's a lesser of evils. That's not a good argument. And it's your duty to be involved in democracy. And, it's if you're not, then you destroy all virtues, because democracy is a place and a situation, a form of government in which empathy can exist. And that means empathy in a broad sense for everybody. And right now we have an instrument of hate and fear that is, very addicted to the love of money. An entire political party that's totally okay with that. And that's the Republican Party right now. Boy, did they fall from grace after Lincoln. They did their Southern strategy and took away the one bad thing in the Democratic Party to get votes. Yeah. Yeah, that's because that area was poisoned with racism more so than other areas. And the Southern strategy meant that do you remember the famous comedian that showed her support for gay people by pulling on one ear, or earlobe? It's like, hey, out there, I care about you. That was Carol Burnett, I believe. What a sweet lady. Anyway, when you don't have love for everybody, that's a problem. And stirring up hate against these folks, Jesus said, love your enemies. Bless those who curse you. Do good to those who despitefully use you. And he's one of the great mystics of history, and nails a lot of things. Whether you believe in him in this way or that way, it doesn't matter. Listen to what the mystics have to say. Usually there's some really good things that they have to say, but don't forget that you, if you choose to accept it, are a mystic. If you practice deep reflection and love within your mind, you're a mystic. You might have this flavor of belief or that attached to it, but you're a mystic. You're a mystic and don't know it. But when you know it, you can say it. You can grow. So anyway, Let's hear about the evil that has infected our country now.
For the disability benefits, it says we'll get back to you in 200 days. Fill out a bunch of forms, wait.
That different leadership has, that department leadership has the final say over the makeup and activities of their agencies. This is not a case of DOGE employees running wild. The Treasury Department and White House even signed a memorandum of understanding preventing DOGE from accessing personal taxpayer data. A DOGE employee can only see taxpayer data that is disconnected from any personal identifiable information. This is the same level of access already granted to some academic researchers and IT professionals. At the IRS, DOGE is performing a similar mission of helping the agency get back to the basics. We must end the Biden administration's focus on auditing more middle-class Americans and shift back to administering the tax code.
Yeah, administering the tax code. Doesn't that, it just sounds so wonderful what he's saying, right? Well, that's how evil puts on a face. Because DOGE is trying to take more profits for the billionaires and lower their taxes. That's what DOGE is about. It's efficiency. Well, if you run a farm, you want it to be efficient. If you're the owner of the farm, they want to be the owner of the country the way the farmer is the owner of the farm. What does that make of all the people who really should be considered trading partners when they are not given their rights, when they are paying the lion's share of the taxes, despite the fact that they're making and benefiting so little from the system, and all of that money and all that profit go into the hands of a few people. Yeah. How's 200 billion sound for you? And these guys have more, some of them. Yeah, that's greed. You know, it's just DOGE wants to treat you like you're just animals on the farm. You know, well, what about old people? Well, we don't need to be having the government take care of those people. They've had their time. I mean, really. If you're going to cut Social Security, that's what you're doing. It used to be that a lot of elderly people were dying in the street because they had nothing. And yet they came up with a system where they pay into it and invest into a system whereby, and they earn this, and whereby they have something to help them to keep them off the street and from starving to death. And that was Social Security. Republican Party has been trying to kill Social Security and denying that they were forever. So, I mean, again, a lot of people say, oh, it's this Trump guy. Well, the Republican Party has been moving in this direction for a long time. They shouldn't be shocked. You know, who's going to support them except for people not enlightened enough or having the time enough to consider all of the intricacies of politics and how that game works, you know, and people that are crazy people who vote against even their own needs and have very little empathy for anyone else. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Yeah, this is the direction they were going in for a long time, and then, wow, you know, oh, we're so shocked. Well, you know, you fell to a level where somebody like that could win in your primaries. That's disgusting. And it comes from this evil, from this worship of money, this love of money, the root of all evil. Hello, hello, hello. Pay attention to that, mystics, my fellow mystics. Pay attention. And this guy is glossing over the thing, the real intent of DOGE. And he's doing it very cleverly.
The agency has struggled for years to perform basic tasks like
They refuse to even raise the alarm. Let me applaud Ranking Member Doggett and Ranking Member Larson for their steadfast leadership in holding DOGE accountable and protecting the American people's private data. What we have seen over the last 7 weeks.
Okay, that data is not being, so that earlier statement was a lie, Our data is being shared with a bunch of kids, basically. The brain doesn't fully develop, now they say, until you're 30. And they have these absolute children, getting all your information. And, oh yeah, I'm sure that they're well trained and grown up enough to handle all of your private information with Social Security. Yeah. Uh-huh. I'm not putting down kids. They're brilliant children out there. My kids are brilliant. They're barely over 30. But yeah, they're brilliant. I love them to death. But let's face it, they're children, and they can easily get carried away. It's like, the people that don't get carried away are the people who really know their stuff. It's like, I've heard that, on a channel you've got to, you're gonna look in the camera and you've got to never say ah or thing like that, and never express any doubt. Yeah, the less people know, the more the certain they seem to be. There's a lot of ifs, ands, and buts to everything that I say here, and I know about it. I study, and I study the good and the bad and the ugly all together, and that's what you got to do if you're really thinking, and that doesn't leave you with vast certainties about the universe and people and everything else. It's a lot of things to consider. And yeah, so don't be lacking in confidence when you hear people like Neil deGrasse Tyson, Michio Kaku, and others talk about the uncertainty of some things. That there are things that, I could be wrong. These are the people you should be trusting. Knowledgeable and humble, and with empathy. So the empathy just isn't existing in this DOGE thing. They want to create a farm where they own the farm, they own everything, and that makes us like farm animals, Time for you to go die for your country. Wait. Why are we at war? Who are we fighting? Is this really necessary? Nope. And we'll throw you in jail if you don't go. So empathetic. And it's not just that, but it's it's how little wages, how little your wages earn now. And it's dropping and dropping and dropping. And Robert Reich pointed out, these different levels of taxation. There used to be a 50% tax on the corporations. It dropped down to the 25, and now it's like 13%, and they want more. Anyway, let's listen to a little more of this.
Weeks is unacceptable. Unaccountable and unelected people with no experience in the systems of government
is unusual because these are unusual times and unusual events. This resolution represents a very modest effort to penetrate the secrecy and determine the extent of the administration's invasion.
Let's see now, just exactly what is he saying here?
Of the privacy of just about every person in America. Musk has accessed and is attempting to access the personal and confidential information of our fellow citizens without our knowing the full extent of what data he's gotten to, what he's copied, how the data is or will be used by him, and the
transparency is what he's talking about here. People that are honest and really care, they're transparent in what they're doing. There's a lack of transparency going on, and DOGE's talking about it. And objective empathy means, you care, you share the feelings, which are connected to needs, and you care. But, the caring part actually requires the objectivity, the creativity, and the compassion, but, you get what I'm saying, right? It means sharing and caring, is when you're adding these extra helps to empathy, right? One baby cries, they all cry. Yeah, they share the feeling, but it's not at the level of actually caring. The one baby doesn't get up and go comfort the other one. But there's some touching things where a couple of little babies, actually do show a certain amount of affection to a twin or something. But so you need the empathy. You need a focus for that empathy so that you can care. And the government is about being objective and using objectivity to meet needs. So we're talking about law, rules of behavior, and he's talking about transparency. Russia's not very, they're not very transparent, and they'll kill somebody that's being transparent about what they're up to. So this is an important issue. So now we know what side this dog is on, and he sounds like he's on our side, the side of the people.
names, clearance levels, and the training of the individuals who I yield back.
Additional members wish to strike the last word. Mr. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was a little mystified to hear you say that this is all about, quote, stuff that does nothing to serve the American people. I don't believe that's what this is about at all. This is about transparency. The stuff that you claim doesn't serve the American people, we're concerned about, like Social Security, veterans benefits, and Medicare. These all concern the American people. And the American people are fed up with this administration and DOGE assessing our government's payment system and taxpayer data. It's understandable why they're worried. The Treasury and DOGE has refused to answer our letters, our calls, and our requests for information. If you've done nothing wrong and you've got nothing to hide, then respond to our requests, and better yet, come before this committee. Don't leave the chair empty. Testify. My constituents, the American people, and all of us should be concerned with what DOGE and its leader, Elon Musk, is doing with our data. Elon Musk receives billions of dollars in government contracts and now has access to the federal payment system and has seen sensitive taxpayer
conflicts of interest. Now, that's what he's bringing up now. In other words, is the fox in the hen house? Yeah. It's a definite conflict of interest when you are benefiting from government agency that is deciding who to benefit. And you have, power there. You have influence. That's a conflict of interest, because that government agency should be free to make the right decisions, to care about you and not just the rich. But when the rich are running the show and involved with that process of making those decisions that are apt to benefit them or not benefit them, that's a conflict of interest. And this is, and this is very important to pay attention to. This guy's on your side, this Mr. Thompson, Congressman Thompson. He's on your side. You got to really listen carefully and see who's on your side. And, when I use the word spiritual, I'm talking about effective empathy, because objective empathy is where we get truth, and compassionate empathy is where we get goodness, and a very important virtue, artfulness, that's creative empathy. That's where we get this artfulness, this ability to see things from a number of perspectives, without which we would not have science, and we would not be having the great advances in science that we've seen, which is allowing me to talk to you right now. So I'm trying to say that this is not spiritual in a good way. I don't know if the way people interpret spirituality. Let me say, there's no bad interpretation in my concept of spirituality, because it is literally the use of empathy in these effective ways to promote virtue. There's no downside to that. But I suppose you could have empathy and then use that to hurt people. But that would be pretty unlikely if the person were to actually be practicing some form of inner mind communication with intent. That's like your controlled dreams sometimes. There's some real intent there. There's some agency there. But I'm going off. I'm pulling in too much information. I don't want to overload you. Let's hear what Mr. Thompson has to say.
Data. To date, he is not.
Musk! I'm sure he's a genius.
and is a very credible person because of the wealth he's accumulated. But that does not put him above the law or the responsibility to come before this committee in this Congress. If he's so great, if these plans and all the fraud and abuse that he's found are so eminent, why isn't he here explaining it? You know why. Because he's out to privatize Social Security. He's been on television the last couple of days talking exactly about Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, and what he intends to do. Private.
You hear that? Yeah. He wants to privatize these things, that's turn it into a business. Well, business has to be fair. And business has to be, is not the job of, the main focus of government. The main focus of government is to be objective and make sure that business is fair. I'm going to take this a little deeper again for just a minute. Your inner child is the business end, where the tire meets the road, where you're really in connection with your needs and your feelings and so on, and you're in the drama, the dramatic self. That's what I call the inner child. That needs education from objective empathy, the inner counselor, which is like government and society. And, okay. And this is what's going on right here. Your inner counselor practicing that objective empathy with your inner child can help you understand what's going on right here. This is, a demand that transparency needs to be present, and it's also pointing out, wow, how what DOGE is doing is not doing the job of government properly, which is to meet the needs of the American people. That's the government has that obligation. That's in a democracy. The government is about setting up laws and rules and transparency so that democracy can live and thrive, and everyone can benefit, not just a few people. Why is that important? Well, consider the game Monopoly. If you know that game, it was actually created to show how capitalism needs to be tweaked. Because eventually, in the game, one person ends up owning everything. And then, usually kids play this. I remember as a child, it's like, well, the one who wins still wants to keep playing, so I can give you some little bit of money, and we can keep playing the game. Because in the end, even the super wealthy, they need the game. And their greed can kill the game. So, if trade's not fair, if people don't have opportunities, and, putting veterans' needs on a shoestring while padding your own pockets as a billionaire, where's the waste? Well, the waste is all of the stuff that, and the power that's been accumulated by the billionaires. That is the waste. And the joke is here that those who are emblematic of where the waste is in our government, trying to make things more efficient. They're the waste. Nobody needs billions of dollars. That's a waste. Oh, it's going back in. We're making discoveries and we're paying for this and that. No. When you have such an unfair situation on the lack of fair trade that you have hungry kids in the school, wow, they are where we should be making our big investment, don't you think? Okay, hungry kids and veterans in the street and coming back wounded from fighting supposedly for our democracy. They were loyal. Where's their reward? They made the biggest trade possible, the risk of their lives, which, by the way, cops do and firefighters and so on. They're not billionaires, but they make the biggest sacrifice. That's not fair. That's nowhere near fair. They shouldn't be going without health care. So let's hear what Mr. Larson is saying.
Advertise it.
I mean,
No,
God, I
already
love you
shifting
guys
around a
as
lot.
people, but your party's broken and bankrupt, and that's why the taxpayers put this president in office and gave us
Listen to this.
unilateral, unified Republican leadership because they want
Unilateral.
us to make sure that their tax dollars are protected and that they're being spent wisely and that we act as fiduciaries and that the people.
Listen to that. Wisely. Okay, again, back to transparency. If he's getting the waste out of the system, and it really is waste, why isn't he there being totally transparent about what he's actually found? And from what we've seen, it really hasn't been much of anything, and there's always no machine is perfect, and no organization is perfect, and actually the government's doing a pretty good job overall. There might be some waste, but if you're going to cut waste, then you have to be transparent. So, what is this fellow, Mr. Arrington? Ugh. It's like, listen to how clever he is, but don't buy it. They're covering over the main point, which is that the real waste is accumulation of money in the pockets of a very few people. And it's been going crazily that way, with people being more productive than they've ever been. Their wages going down like that, right? Going down. And guess who's going up? The wealthy. And when you mess up a system so that the stock market's going down and up and down and up, well, when it goes down, the rich buy. Right? Goes up, maybe they sell. Maybe they just hold that. Yeah. So anyway, I think I borrowed enough. And I want to make sure it's not unfair. Yeah. This is what you got to watch. Now, this is, if you want to see more of this, it's on CNN News 18, and it's on YouTube. So go and see for yourself. But use this right here, this brain that you have. Dear mystics, don't be fooled. Don't be fooled by evil. It has so many faces. Just like your inner artist. It has so many faces. And it's always hiding the hope, dope, greed that is the root of all evil. So until next time, remember, you're a mystic. And you're not just in a world of wonder, you're part of it. Until next time, have a great life.